Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well, I hope you enjoyed the festive season and I hope you're ready for 2022. But before we get into 2022, we're just going to put the brakes on for a second and talk about 2021 because the drivers and the Formula 1 bosses have ranked their top 10 drivers of the season. That's where all the drivers get to vote on who they thought had the best season and then they get ranked according to the points that the drivers gave them. So I thought what we do is talk about who the drivers put in their top 10, who the bosses put in their top 10, and also compare to my top 10. I'll link down in the description below to my video where I've ranked all of the drivers for the 2021 season. It's worth giving it a watch if you're watching this for the first time. And then coming back to this one to talk about the drivers and the bosses as well. Let's delve straight into it at number 10. And the drivers went for Mick Schumacher. A bit of a surprise one for me. The bosses went for Esteban Ocon. And I can completely understand Esteban Ocon being in there. Obviously got his first ever win in Formula 1 this year and was very, very close to a second podium as well. Did pretty well, got consistently in the points and only just fell to his teammate by 7 points in the end after having a really buggy sort of middle patch to the season. What was it? Sort of Monaco through to Silverstone. Really struggled with that chassis he had. And then when he did get the new chassis in, did much, much better. But I think it's very interesting that the drivers have put Mick Schumacher in there. Obviously a rookie this year. Hasn't done too much in that Haas, I wouldn't say. You know, the occasional qualifying was pretty good, or occasionally did pretty well in a race, or put together a battle, obviously, with Max Verstappen in Hungary, which was quite nice to watch. But apart from that, there's not been too much that Mick Schumacher has done for me. Obviously, only outscored his teammate on positions. Technically, Kubica as well, although Kubica was only in there for 2 races. Didn't pick how many points. I'm not so sure about Mick Schumacher being in the top 10, but the drivers decided that he was worthy of that 10th place spot. Then the drivers went for Ocon in 9th place, and Valtteri Bottas got the 9th place spot in the bosses. Again, I didn't have Bottas in my top 10 at all. As I've just said, I can completely understand why you'd have Esteban Ocon in there, but Valtteri Bottas for me seems like an odd one. Yes, he came 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, and it was fairly comfortable in the end, to be fair. An easy 36-point lead over Sergio Perez, and of course, Mercedes won the Constructors' Championship, and that was mainly down to Valtteri Bottas outperforming Sergio Perez, because Lewis Hamilton couldn't quite outperform Max Verstappen. But at the same time, I wouldn't say it's been a vintage year from Valtteri Bottas. Only the one win, a few poles in there to be fair, but hasn't really, set the ground alight. And when it came to fruition that he was going to be moving on to Alfa Romeo next year, put in some very drab performances in the Mercedes and also didn't really do much to battle with for Lewis Hamilton in the championship battle either. Like, lots of people, including myself, were very critical on him not really putting up a fight to Max Verstappen in a lot of the races. So Valtteri Bottas seems like a weird one in 9th place to me. 8th place was the same across the board. It was George Russell. Had a phenomenal season, to be fair. Has driven incredibly well. Sort of spiraled off towards the end of the season, really. Obviously got that podium in Spa. And actually, the Williams, after the summer break, looked absolutely sensational. Even Latifi was picking up points. Out-qualified by Latifi a couple of times this year, but comfortably outscored him. Obviously, half the points of Yuki Tsunoda in the end, but Yuki Tsunoda had to put in a groundbreaking 4th place finish at the end of the season to jump up a little bit. And Williams coming in 8th place, outdoing Alfa Romeo. I think George Russell was worthy of that 8th place spot. 7th place, again, the same across drivers and bosses, was Pierre Gasly. And I could talk about Pierre Gasly for 55 minutes and not run out of superlatives because I think he has been absolutely phenomenal this season. Over 100 points, 110 points, only 5 points behind Daniel Ricciardo, who got a win this season, and then just missed out with AlphaTauri coming behind Alpine in 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. But as I said, Gasly 110 points, Yuki Tsunoda 32 points. We can see who was pulling the weight for that team, really, can't we? Pierre Gasly, absolutely phenomenal. And now someone who I put in 9th place in my rankings, but actually has come a lot higher in the drivers and the bosses rankings, is Fernando Alonso. And now maybe I underplayed how good Fernando Alonso has been this season, because to be fair, I've gone back and watched a few of the races again, and he does just have control over this car, which is phenomenal considering he's had 2 years out of Formula 1. I'll say it, you know, when he came into Formula One, I was one of those people who was like, I'm not so sure Alonso should be back. I'm not so sure he's going to be able to get up to the level again. I think he's just going to be a little bit of a drain on the Alpine team. Obviously, someone to have in the garage. He'll be really good for Esteban Ocon, and maybe we'll pick up some points here or there. Absolutely smashed it. Came in 10th place this year, picked up 81 points, and of course a podium position. Was absolutely sensational from about Monaco onwards. It only took him 3 or 4 races to properly get up to speed in this era of Formula One again, and just looks set to absolutely set the world alight next year. As I said, Alpine coming 5th in the Constructors' Championship. I think they're going to take a big step forward, and I could see Alpine being very, very interesting to watch next year. And I'm really actually looking forward to seeing how Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso do in that new Alpine car. In 5th place for the drivers and the bosses was Charles Leclerc, and I had Charles Leclerc in 5th place as well. I think he's had a really good season, and I think Ferrari are on for something special in 2022, mainly because of this guy here and his teammate. I think, as I've said, throughout the entire season, they're the best pairing on the grid. I get a lot of heat for it. I know that Russell is moving to Mercedes and Russell Hamilton might rival it next year, but I personally think Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz is the best driver pairing on the grid. And Charles Leclerc coming in 5th place here, obviously managed to get 7th in the end, and that was mainly due to the fact that he really missed out due to the safety cars and red flags and so on throughout the entire season, especially in the final race of the year. Probably should have come in 5th place all in all. But yeah, was quite unlucky throughout the entire season. You only have to look at Monaco, where he should have started on pole, but Ferrari couldn't fix the car properly. It didn't quite go his way a lot of time this season, but Charles Leclerc, very, very worthy of that 5th place. And now Carlos Sainz, his teammate, actually came in 4th place from the drivers and the bosses' perspective. So people sort of leaning in towards Carlos Sainz, obviously brand new to Ferrari team, and again, had a sensational season. All of the superlatives I could use for Charles Leclerc, I could mirror in Carlos Sainz, and even more so, because I think Carlos Sainz, I personally put him even a little bit higher than 4th place in my ranking. I put him in 3rd, because I think he's been so incredibly consistent this year in a brand new car. Did manage to come ahead of his teammate and catch up to Lando Norris, his ex-teammate as well. Dragged Ferrari to a 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship, and just looked at home in that Ferrari in every single sense of the word for the entire season. Carlos Sainz, take a bow, you are absolutely wonderful. I did a video a couple of days ago talking about the next era of Formula One, and I feel a little bit bad now for leaving Carlos Sainz out of it, because he's sort of in this weird middle ground. He's not quite in the same realms for me as your George Russell, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen. He's a little bit older than those guys, has a bit more experience in Formula One. But I could definitely see him making some waves over the next few years if Ferrari can get the car right. Number 3 for the drivers and the bosses, again, was the same driver. It was Lando Norris, ended up coming in 3rd place. And Lando Norris, wonderful, wonderful season. Obviously, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but all of these drivers up here have to be at the absolute tip top of their game to get anywhere close to the top of this tree. There are lots of drivers in Formula One that miss out on these superlatives because they are just milliseconds behind their teammates or milliseconds behind the rest of the grid. And Lando Norris was absolutely on top form. The first half of the season, we have to remember, he went into the summer break in 3rd place. He was ahead of a Mercedes and ahead of a Red Bull in Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. Wow, just wow. He was so consistent, had 10 points finishes in a row up until Hungary, where obviously Valtteri Bottas smashed into the back of him. And then in the second half of the season, put another 10 in a row together again. Should have won in Monza, in my opinion. Daniel Ricciardo obviously coming out on top in that one. Should have won in Russia if it weren't for the rain. Should have been in 5th place in the Drivers' Championship by the end of the year. Carlos Sainz just pipping him to it at the final Grand Prix. But Lando Norris, again, a brilliant year from him. Obviously, 3 third places, that 2nd place in Monza. He's getting so close to a win, and I really hope that McLaren can deliver him a win next season. Not only because I'm a McLaren fan, but also because I'd love to see Lando Norris get that first win in Formula One. Number 2, again, drivers and bosses agreed on this one. It was Lewis Hamilton they voted in 2nd place. What more can you say about Lewis Hamilton? Obviously came second in the Drivers' Championship this year after contentious things happened in the final race. I've done enough videos on that, so I'm not going to delve into it. But Lewis Hamilton, personally, for me, is an absolute inspiration when it comes to this grid. Continually at the highest level of Formula One. Does it every single season. I'm sure we'll be back there again if Mercedes can give him the car. Second place for him. Doesn't feel quite right after the dominance that he's had over the last few years. But if anything, I'm kind of glad that there's a new winner in the pot. It was, of course, Max Verstappen, who was voted as the number one for the drivers and the bosses, and from myself as well. And you can't really argue with that, can you? He won the Drivers' Championship. He did everything right. He led the most laps of anybody. He won the most races, had the most pole positions, did everything that he possibly could to get that Red Bull as close to the top of the tree as he could. Obviously, you could say in the last race, Hamilton was robbed. Hamilton was robbed. People are still going on about it. I personally think Max Verstappen was a more than worthy winner of this World Championship. And you know what? He'll probably be back again next year to prove everybody who doubted him wrong again. He is absolutely electric in that Red Bull car. I just hope that Red Bull haven't, put too much into this year and taken away from 2022 for him. Because I think, again, if he's given the right car, we could see him right up there with the Ferraris, with the McLarens, with the Mercedes, battling for those wins. But they were the top 10, so I'll just put them all side by side for you in the edit. And Verstappen obviously came top for everyone. Hamilton, again. I had Carlos Sainz slightly higher than Lando Norris, so I've just flipped those two. I put Pierre Gasly in at 6th place. And you know what? I stand by it. I think Pierre Gasly has been absolutely sensational. Am I a little bit biased? Yes. But I also think he's been wonderful this season. And continually qualifying in those top 3 rows when McLaren's looked really quick at times, the Ferraris looked really quick at times, and getting anywhere close to the Red Bulls and Mercedes was just absolutely phenomenal from Pierre. Yes, Alonso is a lot higher on the drivers and bosses perspective. I think maybe I underestimated Alonso a little bit. Just because I think I had those doubts at the beginning of the season. I think they've just sort of reoccurred throughout the entire year. I've just thought, Alonso can't keep this up, surely. Alonso can't keep this up, surely. And then he did. So I really underplayed Alonso. I'm really confused at why Bottas is in there. I personally put Sergio Perez in there. I think Perez had a better year than Bottas. I know he obviously didn't score more than Bottas. I know that Sergio Perez and Red Bull didn't win the Constructors' Championship either, but Valtteri Bottas was in his 5th year at Mercedes. Sergio Perez only in his 1st year at Red Bull. And I think Sergio Perez was really, really good considering, that is the cursed seat of Formula One. I put Russell in at 8th, so did everybody. As I've spoken about, Alonso in at 9th place, maybe underplayed him a little bit. And then Esteban Ocon in 10. Again, you have to have Ocon in there somewhere just for that race win because he's been wonderful all season, capped it off with that little race win. I think, the likely drivers that maybe could be on the peripheries of someone like a Sebastian Vettel, I think wasn't too bad considering the car that he was given, but at the same time really missed out on a couple of key opportunities. And then I think that's basically it in terms of drivers that could crack anywhere near that top 10. I think the top 10 pretty much writes itself with Max Verstappen being at the top. But again, here are the top 10s for you. Who do you think should be in there? Is there someone that was really obvious that was missed out? Maybe you think Lando Norris should be in 3rd place and you disagree with me and you agree with the drivers and bosses. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time.